This is day 199, the last 20%. I was sitting in my car at a Tesla supercharger station, watching the numbers climb on the screen. At first, this was satisfying. The percentages jumped quickly. 20%, 35, 50, 70. It felt efficient, like progress should feel. You plug in and the system responds. Fast, predictable, rewarding. By the time it hit 80%, I had already mentally checked the box. Almost done. And then, of course, it slowed. Not a little, a lot. What had been climbing steadily now crept forward. 81%, very long pause. 82%, longer pause. You could feel the difference, even if you did not understand the mechanics behind it. Something had changed, and I sat there thinking, this does not feel right. Same car, same charger. Now I actually do understand what's going on here. The charging system slows down on purpose as a safety precaution. The batteries are starting to warm up considerably at this stage. However, the last 20% has the same goal. Suddenly, it felt like I was working harder for less result, even though I actually really wasn't doing anything at all. And then the thought hit me. This pattern is everywhere. This is the pattern we miss. I started thinking about all the projects that I've worked on over the years, business ideas, proposals, marketing campaigns, even things outside of work, fitness goals, writing, personal commitments. So many of them follow the same pattern. At the beginning, there is energy, clarity. You can see the path. You can make progress quickly, and that progress fuels you. It reinforces the belief that you are on the right track. You do not question much in that phase. You just go. And then somewhere along the way, usually when you are pretty far in, it starts to change. You do not always notice the exact moment, but you feel it. The progress slows down. The work gets more detailed. The problems become less obvious and more frustrating. What used to feel like momentum starts to feel like resistance. That is the part we do not talk about enough. Sitting there watching 83% take longer than the previous 20% combined, I started wondering how many things in my life had stopped right there. Not at the beginning, not when things were clearly broken, but right at the edge of being finished. Projects that were 80% complete, maybe even more, things that had real potential, that were close to being something usable, something valuable, something real, and yet they never crossed that line, not because they could not, but because the experience had changed. So when fast becomes slow, when you are at 20%, you expect it to be hard. When you're at 80%, you expect it to be almost done. So when it suddenly becomes harder again, it feels like something went wrong. Like maybe the idea was not as good as you thought. Like maybe you misjudged it. Like maybe it's time to move on or to something else, something new, something that feels like the first 80% again. But sitting there, I realized the charger was not struggling. It was not broken. It was doing exactly what it was designed to do, slowing down on purpose. Because the last 20% requires more precision, more care, more control. You cannot just force it in at the same speed without consequence. Fast gets you most of the way there, slow gets you finished. And that is when it really clicked for me. Maybe the problem is not to abandon things too early. Maybe it's that we do not recognize the moment when the work changes. We treat the last 20% like it's supposed to feel the same as the first 80. And when it does not, we interpret the difference as failure instead of progress. Fast gets you most of the way there. Slow gets you finished. I've started to notice it more now, the feeling when things slow down, when progress becomes less visible, when the work becomes less exciting and more exact. It does not feel like momentum anymore. It feels like effort. But instead of seeing that as a sign to step away, I'm starting to see it differently, like a marker, a quiet signal that says you are close. Closer than most people will ever get. So what is the real question here? I eventually unplugged that car and drove away before it hit 100%. Not because I could not wait, but because I did not need to. 80% was enough for the car, but the moment stuck with me. Because in most areas of life, 80% is not enough. It is just where things start to actually matter. Maybe the real question is how many things we start, but how many things we start, but how many things we are willing to stay with when it stops being fast. The next time you feel that shift, when the work slows and the progress becomes harder to see, do not mistake it for failure. Recognize it for what it is, the signal that you are entering the last 20%. the part that separates the people who finish from the people who almost did. Stay with it. The work changes because you are close.